We live in an age of impossible standards. Everywhere we turn, we are bombarded with messages telling us we should be more successful, more attractive, more productive, more fulfilled. Social media feeds overflow with curated perfection. Workplaces glorify burnout as dedication, and self-help gurus promise that if we just hustle harder, we'll finally arrive at some mythical state of enough. But beneath this frenetic striving lies a quiet, gnawing truth. For many of us, no amount of achievement ever feels sufficient. The goalposts keep moving. The hunger never fades. This isn't just about ambition. It's about something deeper, more primal. It's the human need to prove, to conquer, to rise above, not because we truly want to, but because we're terrified of what it would mean if we didn't. We mistake this endless striving for drive, when in reality, it's often compensation, a desperate attempt to outrun the fear that, at our core, we are lacking. To understand why we chase superiority with such desperation, we need to examine where this impulse originates. From childhood, we're conditioned to associate our worth with external validation. A gold star for good behavior, praise for high grades, admiration for athletic prowess. These early experiences teach us a dangerous equation. Achievement equals worthiness. The problem intensifies when these messages become internalized. The child, who only receives attention when they excel, learns to equate love with performance. The student who is ridiculed for mistakes develops perfectionism as a survival mechanism. These patterns don't disappear with adulthood. They simply take new forms in our careers, relationships, and self-image. Modern society amplifies these tendencies exponentially. Where past generations might have compared themselves to neighbors or classmates, we now measure ourselves against the entire world through social media. The college graduate doesn't just compete with peers for jobs. They see LinkedIn profiles of 25-year-old CEOs. The aspiring artist doesn't just face local competition. They compare themselves to viral sensations with millions of followers. This constant exposure to exceptionalism creates a distorted baseline for what constitutes normal success. This relentless pursuit manifests in countless ways across different domains of life, each with its own unique consequences. In the workplace, corporate culture has become a breeding ground for pathological striving. The hustle mentality glorifies overwork as a virtue, turning sleep deprivation into a badge of honor. Employees brag about 80-hour work weeks as if exhaustion were synonymous with dedication. But beneath this performative workaholism often lies deep insecurity, the fear that without constant productivity, one has no value. The high-achieving professional who can't take a vacation isn't just dedicated, they're often running from the terror of stillness. What might they discover about themselves if they stop moving? The mid-level manager who micromanages every detail isn't just thorough, they're likely compensating for some past experience of powerlessness. In physical appearance, gyms today are filled with people sculpting their bodies, not for health, but as armor against past humiliations. The fitness industry thrives on before and after transformations that promise not just better health, but redemption. Change your body, change your life is the unspoken mantra, as if physical perfection could somehow erase old wounds. The former fat kid, now obsessed with six-pack abs, isn't just pursuing fitness, they're trying to rewrite history. The once scrawny teenager who transforms into a bodybuilder isn't just building muscle, they're constructing a fortress against ever feeling vulnerable again. This kind of physical striving isn't about wellness, it's about using the body as a canvas to paint over psychological scars. In relationships, even our personal connections aren't immune to this dynamic. The partner who needs to be the smartest, funniest, most accomplished person in the room isn't just confident. They're often terrified of being ordinary. The parent who pushes their child relentlessly toward achievement may be trying to heal their own childhood disappointments through their offspring. Social media has added new layers to this performance. Relationships become content. Intimacy becomes something to showcase, and the pressure to present a perfect partnership creates its own unique strain. The couple who constantly posts curated moments of bliss may be compensating for private struggles, performing happiness as proof against others and their own doubts. The cruel irony of compensatory striving is that it doesn't work. No amount of external validation can fill the hole that internalized inadequacy leaves behind. This is because the problem was never really about achievement. It was always about self-perception. Consider the executive who finally reaches the C-suite, only to discover the anticipated sense of fulfillment never arrives, or the artist who achieves critical acclaim but still feels like an imposter, or the fitness enthusiast who achieves their goal body but still sees flaws in the mirror. In each case, the achievement fails to deliver its promised emotional payoff because the wound wasn't about the external milestone, it was about the internal narrative. This phenomenon explains why so many high achievers report feeling empty despite their success. The promotions, accolades, and milestones provide temporary relief, but the underlying anxiety remains untouched. Like drinking salt water to quench thirst, each achievement only intensifies the craving for more. The consequences of this endless chase extend far beyond individual dissatisfaction. Collectively, we've created a society that pathologizes normalcy, rewards burnout, distorts our relationships, and creates a crisis of meaning. Basic contentment is framed as complacency. Taking time to rest is seen as laziness. Enjoying simple pleasures is dismissed as settling. We've created a cultural narrative that suggests unless you're constantly optimizing, you're failing. Workplace cultures celebrate those who sacrifice health and relationships for productivity. We've turned self-neglect into a virtue and boundary setting into a weakness. When we see others primarily as benchmarks for our own success, genuine connection becomes impossible. Friends become competitors, partners become status symbols, and community gives way to comparison. When all our energy goes into proving our worth, we have little left to discover what actually makes life meaningful. We become human doings rather than human beings. Escaping this trap requires more than just achieving less. It demands a fundamental reorientation in how we understand worth and success. It requires tracing the roots, separating striving from proving, practicing enoughness, redefining success, and embracing ordinary excellence. Ask yourself, who originally made you feel not enough? What experiences planted the seeds of this insecurity? Recognizing that your drive may be someone else's voice in your head is the first step to reclaiming your motivations. Healthy ambition comes from curiosity and desire, not fear. Ask, would I still pursue this if no one were watching? If I couldn't tell anyone about it, if the answer is no, examine whether you're chasing the right goals. Begin introducing small moments of intentional satisfaction. After completing a task, pause before immediately moving to the next one. At the end of the day, reflect on what was sufficient rather than what was left undone. Create personal metrics untethered from external validation. Instead of, how does this look? Ask, how does this feel? Instead of, what will people think? Ask, what do I actually want? Our culture worships extraordinary achievement, but most of life happens in the ordinary. Learn to find dignity in daily consistency, rather than waiting for grand validations. There is an alternative to compulsive striving, what we might call integrated ambition. This is striving that comes from wholeness rather than lack, from desire rather than fear. It's the difference between running away from yourself and running toward your genuine interests and values. Integrated ambition allows for effort without obsession, growth without self-rejection. It understands that we can want to improve without believing we're currently inadequate. Most importantly, it recognizes that no achievement can give us what we can only give ourselves: unconditional self-regard. The paradox we must confront is this: the more we chase superiority to compensate for feeling inferior, the more inferior we actually feel. Only by stepping off this treadmill do we discover that what we've been searching for wasn't ahead of us. It was within us all along. In a world that profits from our insecurity, choosing to believe in our own enoughness may be the most radical act of all. It's not about abandoning growth, but about pursuing it from a place of wholeness rather than hunger. Not because we're not enough as we are, but because we're curious about who we might become. That shift from proving to exploring, from compensating to creating, changes everything. It turns striving from a prison into a playground, and in that space, we might finally discover what it means to live rather than just achieve.